Very special guest. For some of you that are old friends of the Hispanic Chamber of E-commerce, you know Gerry Carrillo is one of the old timers in the organization. He has been involved with HISEC since 2010. So it's always a pleasure, and it's someone that I appreciate also a lot as a friend. So welcome, Gerry. Oh, you're muted, Gerry. You muted yourself. As it, you're muted, Gerry. No, it says guest has muted himself.
Unmute. How's that?
There you go. There you go.
There you go.
There you go, Gerry. So welcome, Gerry.
Welcome. Hey, thank you. Sorry about a little bit of technical difficulties there. Good to be here, Taide. It's an honor.
No, thank you. Thank you for joining us, Gerry. So, like I said, we have a very important topic to discuss today. You're going to be presenting a lot of information. Your presentation has a lot of info for those that are interested in owning a home, post-pandemic times, and, looking forward to hear what you have to say, how the real estate market is, and what advice you have to give to our audience. So the stage is yours, Gerry.
My pleasure. Thank you. My pleasure. No, well, thank you, Taide. It is an honor to be here and to be able to present and share, really, because I know the market, the real estate market in general, with the pandemic and everything that's happening, has been very stressful and unknown. There's a lot of unknown factors, and the real estate market, going as high as it has been. I know that's been a little bit crazy, but in general, I just wanted to thank you, Taide, and get started with this presentation. Let me see if I can make my screen a little bit bigger so that I can see my presentation here, and we can be on the same page. I appreciate this. So let me just give me 1 second here. Let me just always a little bit of technical difficulties at the beginning, but just want to be able to. Okay. So let me see if there's a way I can switch this. Okay, perfect. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about just the steps to home ownership. There are a lot of steps. It's complicated or simple depending on how, where you're at, and the steps that you are willing to take. But before we get started, I wanted to talk about in general what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to be talking about some myths that are maybe you've heard or you read online when it comes to the real estate market, buying a property. So we'll cover that. Then we're going to go into the steps. And step one would be decide. When it comes to buying, you want to decide. Step one, decide to buy and define your goals. Step two is going to be hiring an agent and a lender. Step three is knowing your numbers when it comes to finance and your personal budget and all that good stuff. And then number four will be find a home. And number five, make an offer and negotiate with the seller. And number six, review all of the reports and all of the disclosures that come with buying a property. And then number six, close and get your keys and celebrate, right? So we're going to go ahead and start the presentation, and we're going to go to the next slide, which will be, well, here we are. So just a little bit about me before I jump onto the next slide, but we'll stay here. And just a little bit about myself. My name is Gerry Carrillo. I work for 10X Realty, TXR Homes, it's also known as. And I've been in the industry for almost 20 years, 17 going and 18 years next year, of selling and helping people buy and develop land, develop properties, condos, apartment complexes, anything you can think of. I've done it. Been thankful. God has been good and been able to gather a lot of experience over the last 17 years. But Spencer Lugash is my broker. He also is an attorney at the Lugash Law Center. And it's always good to know that you're in good hands. So a lot of the information that I've been able to gather over the last 7 years, I've been with Spencer Lugash, and a lot of good information. So I'm going to go ahead and jump to the next slide. Just wanted you to know a little bit about myself. So home buying myths. We're going to go ahead and go to the next slide. Myth number 1 is it okay to start looking at homes as your first step? And it's a myth, meaning you don't want to just jump out and start looking at homes as a first step. So that's a myth. I would say don't do that. You want to be able to know your numbers. There's a couple steps that you want before you go out and look at homes. And the reason I say this, it's a myth, is in my experience, what I've seen is people have gone out, looked at homes, they fall in love with a home, then they'll look at the numbers, and then maybe that home that they fell in love with, it was out of their price range, or it was in their price range, but they weren't ready to actually move on making an offer because they weren't qualified, didn't have everything lined up, and they didn't have all of their steps in a row. That property was no longer available, and then they fell in love with that property, and even though they ended up buying another property, they were heartbroken, and their heart was always on that property. Híjole, what if that property, we could have bought it? So don't start looking at homes as far as physically and wanting to go in person, talking to realtors and trying to figure out if you can buy it. Don't do that. First step is well, we'll get to the first step, but that's a myth. So let's go on to the next myth, number 2. So myth number 2 is, can I save money by not working with a real estate agent? And reality, when you buy a home, you're actually not paying the real estate agent. The person who's selling the home is paying the real estate agent. And even if you were selling a property, I would highly recommend not working with the same real estate agent when it comes to selling and buying. Like if the agent ends up being for both, it happens, but it's better to have your own representation, somebody who's looking out for your own best interest, and somebody who's experienced. So that's a myth. You won't save money by avoiding working with the real estate agent. You want to work with a professional, experienced, consultative real estate agent who will guide you and answer all your questions. Let's go on to the next myth, please. So myth number 3, do I need perfect credit? That's a really good one. It is a myth. You do not need perfect credit. There are a lot of programs out there, depending on if you're a first-time home buyer. And by the way, first-time home buyer is defined as not owning a home in the last 3 years. So there are programs out there. If you have good credit, obviously you'll get better interest rates, and you will. It is better, but it's not that you cannot buy, if that makes sense. So si tienes buen crédito, mejor. And if your credit está más o menos, te podemos ayudar también. So let's go on to the next slide. So myth number 4. So do I need 20% down to buy a property? And this is one that I get asked all the time. Do I need 20% down? Because 20% down is $20,000 for each $100,000 that a property costs. So that's a large down payment. And it's great if you have 20% down, but it's not necessary. That is another myth. There are programs that you can buy a home with 0 if you're military, past, or present, 0% down, or even 3.5% down if you haven't owned for 3.5 years, owned a property. So that's $3,500 for every 100,000 versus 20,000. So next slide, please. So the last myth will be this market. I wanted to save the best myth for last. Is it impossible to buy in this market? It's not impossible, but it is challenging. I'll be very honest with you. It's not impossible. You can buy, but you do need a team around you, a real estate agent and a lender that really knows the market and is really experienced and professional and knows how to get aggressive and knows certain strategies that are needed to communicate with the other agent and learn about the seller, what are the seller's needs, and just probe and see if there's a match. Sometimes it's not so much about the price. Right now, the prices are really high. We'll get into that in these upcoming slides. We haven't even got into the steps. But sometimes it's more than just the price of the home. I have had many clients that have been able to get an offer accepted, even though they weren't the strongest offer. Sometimes it's connecting the heartstrings of the seller and the buyer, and when there's a match more than price, sometimes it's the kids or the scenario where they remember when they were young and they were starting off, and they'd prefer to sell it to you if there's a match. So price is important, terms are important, but it's not the only thing. So it's not impossible to buy in this market. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the actual steps of home ownership. So step one is you want to decide that you want to buy. Thinking about buying a home, it's a good thing. But once you decide is once you start planning and you start wanting to strongly desire to be able to buy a property. So I have in my slides here, making the decision is the first step to home ownership. And because once you start deciding, once you make the decision that you actually want to buy, then you'll start changing maybe some of your spending habits. You'll talk to the wife or your husband, and you guys will be more on the same page of, let's not go eat out every night, or let's cut this out of our budget, or let's not travel as much because we have a goal in mind. So once you decide, then you become a more powerful force to reckon with. So that would be the recommendation there, is decide. And then the numbers, set your goals based on your numbers. So your goals when it comes to buying is going to be unknown until you actually talk to a lender and talk to a real estate agent. Many people, I've seen first-time home buyer presentations also, and I know that many real estate agents say that talking to a real estate agent or talking to a lender should be your first step. And I think that's a valid first step. But the reason I put decide your goals is because nobody can define your goals for you. You need to decide what you want for yourself. But a real estate agent, an experienced, well-qualified real estate agent and lender can guide you and help you and break down the steps and also the goals that you have, that you share. So defining your why, when you want to buy, will be determined on once you decide. And then a little bit further than that is, okay, why do I want to buy it? Is it because I want to, I was single, now I'm married, and now I have a small baby, and we want a yard, or I'm getting close to retirement and I want to sell my property so that I can go buy another property closer to my kids because I really love my grandkids and I want to be closer to them. So your why is really important. But having those goals in mind, knowing your numbers, that's your first step, in my opinion. So we can move on to step number 2. So step number 2 would be hiring the right agent, and we'll talk about the lender as well here in a little bit. But working with a knowledgeable, an experienced agent, it's just going to mean, for you, it's going to mean less stress. It's going to mean having somebody do some of the heavy lifting for you. What it will also mean is, it'll help you if you work with a well-experienced agent that they're well-connected and they have a big sphere of sellers and buyers and other agents as well, so that when you have a property that you want to buy, if it fits the criteria, they might be able to see it before it hits the market based on the database and the network that they have. So that's really important. An agent who is good with communication is key, because one of the biggest complaints, unfortunately, is that real estate agents don't answer the phone or they don't communicate. So finding somebody that is good when it comes to communication and that asks you how you prefer your communication, because these days it might not be by phone or by email, it might be by Instagram chat or by Facebook private messenger. So whatever your form of communication is, it's important that you're on the same page and working as a team with your real estate agent who's in your area. Another thing that's really important is somebody that has negotiation skills. If an agent has been in the industry for 3 to 5 years at least, you should be okay. One of the things you can do to find out how many years an agent has been in the industry is you can, and I recommend this all the time, is Google that agent, but not so much Google. look up that agent in the state that they're in. They might be in the state of California, like where I'm at. So in the state of California, Department of Real Estate, you can Google, you can not Google, but in the Department of Real Estate website, in any state that you're in, because I know this is nationwide, you can find out the agent's name, full name, or license number, and then you can see when they got their license, and also if there's any negative marks towards that agent. This is because the Department of Real Estate in every state is the organization that gives the license to us as agents. So that's a good thing to do. I highly recommend that. I do that when I work with other agents. I find out how long they've had their licenses. So if I'm doing it as a professional, highly recommend that you do it as well. But this is another really important thing is working with an agent who has experience. Is they're going to minimize your risk when it comes to legalities, because the real estate buying a property actually is you go through a lot of legal contracts. There are a lot of legal pitfalls that you have to watch out for. And you want to work with an agent who knows the contracts, who can explain the contracts, and who has read the contracts more than once and can explain if you prefer item by item. Have clients that are analytical, and we go item by item, line by line, we read through it, explain it. I have other clients that they just want me to explain, give me the important parts. So either way, it's fine. As I mentioned earlier, the broker that I work for, he is a real estate attorney, and he's been he is an attorney that takes care of us as the agents, as a broker. So he gives us classes on the legal contracts every month, and sometimes twice a month. So the laws change every year, and so it's important to stay up on all of that. Let's see here. What else? Another thing, as far as my slides go here, is you want to work with an agent who's also aggressive. If it needs to come to being aggressive, and when it comes to negotiation, and you know how to turn it on, you need to have an agent that can do that. It's good to be nice. I think I consider myself a good agent. I'm very nice, but if I have to, I can turn it on and be aggressive, because it's a negotiation, and your clients, you are who matter to the agent that you're working with. You should matter. The client comes first. There's a fiduciary responsibility that says in each contract that us as agents, it's our responsibility to look out for your financial situation as if it was our own, and to put that first. So it's important to work with an agent that understands the legal documents, but also was willing to go to bat for you guys. And they can dig deeper, which is another point that I have here. You want to work with an agent if you do like a property, and it's not just putting in an offer, it's digging deeper with the agent, as I mentioned earlier, finding out what the seller wants, what's important to them, why are they selling, where are they going, and what are the terms that the seller needs. And finding out as much information as possible is what will help you get your offer accepted on the property that you want. So it's really important. Let's see here, what else? But ultimately, who you hire matters. It's really important to work with a well qualified agent. I have clients who have moved out of state, as an example, and I've helped them find an agent, because I do have a large database of agents that I know through social media. We can connect with agents all over the nation, and I've vetted agents for my clients who've moved out of California, and found them good agents. Being an agent, so I'm able to ask all the right questions and find out if they're experienced, and get a feel for, are they aggressive if they need to be? Do they know what they're doing? Are they full-time? Really important. And so working with an agent, the right agent, really matters. And they can save you, at the end of the day, it could save you or make you thousands of dollars, which we've done 10,000 negotiating, 5,000, $20,000 sometimes we've made or got credit back on different things, because there are different steps when it comes to putting in an offer. The step one is writing up the offer and getting the offer accepted. But once you're in contract, and we'll talk about that a little bit here in the future, in the next couple of slides, but once you're in the contract, then there's a second phase of negotiations, which would be the inspection phase. and we'll talk about that in the future. But for now, let's move on to the lender. What do you need to look out for when you hire the lender? So the lender, you want to find a lender who's experienced, has a consultative approach when it comes to giving you advice, and he's not pushing you into one product or another. He has a team who supports him. If they have an in-house underwriter, which is the final decision maker for your loan approval, if they're in-house, meaning that the company that they work at, that underwriter is located in there at the same place, that's a plus. Not necessary, but it's always a good thing for communication and for time. That's a good thing. An agent, a lender who's honest, who will work at your pace, because sometimes clients need to repair their credit or to improve their credit, and we help clients at their pace. We've had clients, and I say we, the lender that I work with, the majority, his name's James Carmody, but there are a lot of good lenders out there, and we work at the client's pace. If the client wants to take it slow, he's not ready, we'll work with him. We've worked with clients for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, up to 5 years, and longer if we need to, or if the client wants to. But we will help the client make the steps and guide that client through the roadmap, is what I call it, to be able to get to their destination. And sometimes, there are certain things that need to be done. Working with the right lender, I did loans for 5 years, my first 5 years of my industry, when I was in the industry back in 2003 when I got my license. And there are a lot of things that I learned about the credit industry. The credit industry, it was put together by banks, and it's pretty complicated. So when it comes to credit repair or improving your credit, you don't really want to, I would recommend, you don't want to do it on your own. You want to work in partnership with a lender. Credit, that's a whole nother topic. That could be a whole nother presentation, but credit itself, it's complicated. But I'll give you a tip. So when it comes to your credit limits, well, first of all, let me back up. What I was saying about the lender is, if you want to pay off loans or improve your credit, usually what I've seen is people will pay off loans on their own. They have a game plan, they have a goal, and it makes sense that, hey, I owe on this car $20,000, and I have a credit card, it's $10,000. I'm going to pay those off before I go and buy a home. But in actuality, if you pay those off, your credit score will go down and you will be less qualified. That doesn't make sense to you, but that's the way the credit industry is. The tip that I was going to give you, I'll give it to you now, is you want to keep your credit limit for any revolving credit or installment loans. You want to keep it at 30%. So an example is, let's just say you have $1,000 credit limit, and instead of paying that off, you can bring it down to you have $1,000 credit limit and you owe $1,000, so you're maxed out. But a tip would be to bring it down to 25 to 30%. So if you owe now, you pay it down to 30%, you owe 30% of your total credit limit, and that will bring your credit score up. But if you pay it off, or if you owe more than 30% or less than 30%, your credit score actually goes down. So I didn't invent the credit industry, but I just know that's how it works. And that's just one small part of the credit industry. So that, like I said, that's a whole nother conversation. But if you have questions, feel free to put it in the chat, and I will make sure that I will answer all questions after the webinar, after this presentation. So working with the right lender is really important, but the lender can recommend, can help you directly to repair your credit, but paying off credit or debt that you have this is the key, through the purchase, that's when your credit will not be affected negatively if you pay off or pay down. So you want the lender to instruct you on what you should pay off or what you should pay down and how much through the purchase. That's the only way that your credit will not be affected, because it's being done for the purpose of buying a property. But if you do it on your own without the advice or guidance of a lender or an agent who understands loans, then you will actually hurt yourself, and you could put yourself back for about a year. One of the other recommendations I would do is, even if you're not considering buying now, because I get that a lot too, like I wondering if I could buy, but I'm not in a big rush. I'm thinking maybe down the road. I would recommend always reach out to me if you're in San Diego, and if you're not in San Diego, reach out to an agent that you know, like, and trust, and have them recommend a lender, and run your credit with a lender, and go through the steps as if you were buying, so that you know exactly where you stand. Think of yourself as being on a map. So you're in one place right now, but you want to get to this other place, this other destination, which is owning a home. And in order to do that, you have to do certain things, and you have to go through a certain highway, a certain route to get there. But sometimes if you wait, what I'm trying to say is, if you wait to pull credit and to look at your buying options once you feel that you're ready, there might be a surprise on your credit report, because I've seen this happen lots and lots and lots of times, because credit reports always have bad information, misinformation, errors. Um, there might be something on there that will push you back another year because you have to pay this down or pay this off. So I'm talking about debt. There might be something on your credit report that you didn't expect, and that might push you back, or push out your home buying possibilities longer, and you didn't expect that. So the reason I recommend, if you're thinking about buying in the future, even if it's a year or 2 years away, it's good to team up with somebody like myself, a professional, who can look at all your numbers, work with an agent, and a lender, and then they'll say, okay, pay this off, save this money, etc. Or open up a new credit. You might not have enough credit lines if you haven't owned before. If you don't have much credit, we can help you build the credit needed to purchase. So working with the right lender, working with the right agent, it's so important. But working with an agent who will work at your pace is important. Somebody that will charge you a flat fee, and also somebody who's service oriented. So we'll keep moving forward. Kind of long winded, but it's a lot of information. So we'll keep going. So let's see here. So going to the next slide, please. Muchas gracias, Taide. I appreciate it. So, okay, the next step is knowing your numbers, and we'll get into financing, which are what types of loans there are out there. And I'm just going to go over the financing briefly, but the most importantly, as I've mentioned before, know your numbers. You should always buy off of your numbers. How much you should buy is based solely off of your numbers. The credit industry, when you work with a lender, they're not going to lend you a home based off of what you spend on a monthly basis for all your expenses. They're going to base it solely on your income to debt ratio when it comes to housing. So what's going to affect your housing? So they're not going to look at, on your credit report, you're not going to see how much you spend at Starbucks, or how much you spend, going out, or eating out, or traveling. I know with COVID right now, it's been a little bit restricted, so we've all, I think, spent a little bit less. But for the most part, what I'm trying to say is your lifestyle expenses are not going to be in or on your credit report. So it's important to track those. I would recommend tracking them for 3 months. Think of it as a bucket. So you have a bucket, and you have your paycheck. You know exactly what that is. If it's $1,000 or $100,000, you put that in there, and then you have a bunch of holes in the bucket. So every month, your expenses, you put your paycheck in and it goes out. But many people, the majority, don't know exactly which holes that paycheck is coming out of. So those would be your expenses. But tracking those expenses, and then you can minimize some of those expenses. You could say, you know what, I'm not gonna spend at Starbucks every month, because that's $300 a month, and I'm gonna cut this out. I'm gonna cut that out. But you have to realize where it's coming out first before you can take that off, cut that out. And in essence, it's kind of like giving yourself a pay raise. So just a little tip there. But as I mentioned earlier, getting a clear roadmap, it's important when it comes to the numbers as well, knowing how much you're going to need to save, how much for a down payment, how much it's going to be for closing costs. And in this market, it's a very tough market, because as far as getting a credit from the seller, in different markets, when it's a seller's market or a buyer's market, things change. Right now, it's more of a seller's market because there are not too many homes on the market because of COVID. About 50% reduction in inventory because of COVID. Prior to COVID, interest rates were about 5.5% with good credit, and there were 50% more homes on the market. But now, the homes on the market, there's a 50% reduction, and there are lower interest rates. So basic supply and demand economics 101 is there's not too many options, homes for sale, and there's a really low interest rate, so there's a lot of buyers. So that's why prices keep going up and up and up, because people just keep wanting and paying more. That's getting into the numbers. A little side note is one of the questions I get all the time is, should I buy right now? Is it a good time to buy? What do you think? Is the market going to crash? And I say, it's a really good question. And, everybody wonders if it's a good time to buy always. But right now, given the fact that, COVID, we have good interest rates, and prices are really high. So if you buy right now, you'll buy on the high side. But you have an opportunity, which is really low interest rates, like 3%, which is amazing. And when it comes to the total cost of the loan, you have to look at, you can go online. There are mortgage calculators everywhere that are free, and you can punch in the numbers. So this is how I answer the question to you. If you've thought about, should I buy or should I wait for the market to crash? What do you think? Is it a good time to buy? So this is, I think, the biggest question. And I always recommend that you should go off of your numbers. If you can afford a property now, if you qualify, and you're in an industry where your income wasn't affected, or how much your income was affected, because I think we're past the worst, then and you've comfortably purchased something and your payments are comfortable, then I would say buy off of that, your monthly payment, your total cost, your monthly payment. But to answer your question, when it comes to, is it a good time to buy? Should I wait? Should I wait for the market to crash? Is the market going to crash? That kind of a thing. I would use an amortization schedule, a mortgage calculator. If you punch in two scenarios, scenario A is right now. Scenario A, say $700,000 purchase at 3% interest rate, fixed for 30 years. That's today's market, which is great. Not so good because it's expensive, but it's good because interest rates are low for a buyer. Punch in the scenario on that. For that first scenario, if you're on the mortgage calculator, you'll see an amortization schedule, and you can go and see what the total cost is after 30 years for total interest paid, and you'll see what that is. And if you punch in the same scenario, but you a little bit further in the future, which I think prices will soften a little bit because interest rates will go up, and that's what will cause the softening. So you'll have a different scenario, which would be higher interest rates. Before COVID, interest rates were 5.5%, 5%, 5.5% fixed 30 years with good credit, good income. So you put that scenario in 5.5%, 6% maybe, and you put in, instead of 700,000, you put in the price point into that mortgage calculator of, let's say, 600, maybe 550. So if prices went down about $150,000 for a home, but interest rates went up, what I've already done the math many times, it's pretty much a wash. You're going to be paying the same amount after 30 years for that house. You're going to pay another $150,000 to $200,000 for the house, but you saved it up front on the purchase. But the total interest will be about the same as if you bought it now. Lower interest total amount would be less, and higher purchase price. So I know that's a question that a lot of people have, so I just want to throw that out there. So getting back to the numbers, it's a lot of information. So I'm going to take a little drink of water because se me seca la boca. But let's see here. So let me just read my notes here. Some of the things about the numbers is, yeah, I think I've covered almost everything about the numbers. So we'll go on to the next slide here. If you have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat. So when it comes to the numbers, we want to talk about financing options a little bit. And option the four options that I put here, there are more options, but these are the main options that most people use. And cash, conventional, FHA, or VA. So when it comes to financing options, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency being kind of a big thing right now, but the housing industry does not currently accept Bitcoin, and I just want to throw that out there. They will accept it as a down payment, but they will not accept it to purchase. So certain cryptocurrencies and certain banks, not all banks, very few, because it's so new. But in the future, who knows? It might be a different story. But for now, we'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Taide. So for now, cash is one of the options that, in order of competition, if you want to think of it like that, if you're buying a property, and who are you when it comes to buying? Are you a cash buyer, a conventional buyer, FHA buyer, or VA buyer? So just depending on where you're at, I wanted to talk about what it looks like in the seller's eyes. The seller, a full cash offer, not a lowball cash offer, but a full cash offer is always best if they're giving the full price, because it's hard to beat that. They can close in 10 to 15 days, as is, no termite inspection, no appraisal. So that would be one of the financing options. It's not really financing, it's cash out of pocket. So we'll go to the next slide, please. Thank you, Taide. And the next slide is conventional. So conventional financing is not 20% down only. Conventional financing is, you can do 5% down, 10% down, 20% down, and in some conventional financing terms, based on the borrower, the credit worthiness of the borrower, you can even put as little as, I think, 3.5% down as well for conventional financing. But conventional financing versus FHA, which is government-backed financing, each has pros and cons. So the pro for conventional financing is you'll have a lower mortgage insurance payment. You will put a little bit more money down, so your payment will be a little bit smaller. But the interest rates are a little bit higher when it comes to conventional financing, but the benefit is your mortgage rate will be lower. And mortgage insurance rate is based off of purchase price times 1.35. It can be up to that amount if you're putting little money down. But in the conventional financing, if you put 20% down, then that's when you don't really have mortgage insurance, and that's why most people say 20% down, which is ideal. If you can do that, that's great. But the other thing is they're a little bit stricter on the debt to income ratio. So their guidelines when it comes to financing is a little bit stricter, but it's a good option. So that's a whole conversation itself that I'm not going to get into right now. But we'll move on to the next slide. I just wanted to present to you that conventional financing is one of the financing options. And then FHA is the third option that I put on here, which is government-backed financing. And when it comes to government-backed financing, the 3.5% down, most people know this as first-time homebuyer program. And reality, as I mentioned earlier, I believe a first-time homebuyer is not somebody who's never owned a home, but they haven't owned in the last 3 years. So if you haven't owned in the last 3 years, this is a good option for you. It's 3.5% down, so it's $3,500 for every $100,000 of purchase. They're more flexible on the debt to income ratio. So how much debt you have on your credit report versus how much money you make. That's the debt to income ratio, and they're a little bit more flexible on that. And their mortgage insurance is a little bit higher, so that's the negative of the FHA. But it is backed by the federal government, so they want to help out, and that's why there's this low down payment program. So, and there's a few more, but if you have questions, we can get into them. Sometimes cities, I'll just say it real quick. There are sometimes city by city that has additional financing to help you with a second or a down payment assistance program or a down payment program. And sometimes the money runs out, but as an example, so here, 3.5% down, they might help you with 5% down. There's pros and cons to everything. Some of those, some, not all, but some of the down payment assistance programs, the way it works is you basically become you have a business partner, and the city becomes your business partner. So if ever in the future you sell your property, you have to, you know, te tienes que mochar. You have to split your profit with them because they helped you with the down payment. So if you can do it on your own, I highly recommend don't get a business partner when it comes to buying a home for your own personal residence. You want to do it on your own if you can. And let's see here. So we'll go on to the next slide, which would be VA financing. And this is for active or past military. So if you are active or past military, you probably already know about this. But if you don't, I just wanted to briefly cover this, that it's a 0%, so 0% down, which is great, and your closing costs are minimal. One of my clients who I met at an open house, he already had his financing in place. He ended up buying the property, but he had his own lender, and I suggested that he, you know, if he wanted to save money, he should talk to the lender that I have, that I recommend. And he ended up, instead of paying $8,000, I think, through like a maybe Federal Credit Union or some of the big name brands, I think he ended up paying like $2,000 for closing costs. So even though VA is zeroed down, you still have closing costs. So again, I can help you if you talk to an agent in your area. If you're not in San Diego, you should be able to find a lender who can work with you to bring your closing costs down. And yeah, so I just want to mention that. All right, we'll go on to the next slide here. No sé cómo vamos, Taide, pero aquí estoy echándole, moving forward.
We have time.
So, thank you. Okay, so fine. So the next step would be what I always say is the easiest step when it comes to the home buying process. When it comes to, hey, I want a house with a view, or I want 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, open floor plan with a pool, 2-car garage with a big yard, with with no yard. All of the details that come with the actual house. That's the easiest part, in my opinion. But what I would recommend is having, if you're buying it on your own, that's good. Or if you're buying it, your husband and wife, or if you're a young college student, just graduated, you want to have a deal breaker list. You want to know what's a deal breaker. So an example, if it doesn't have a swimming pool, I don't want to see it. It's a deal breaker because I want a swimming pool. So you want to communicate all of that to your real estate agent. And, that's really important to have your own deal breaker list. You might change your opinion after you've gone out to the market and seen a few homes, because the market will also give you some information and feedback. Sometimes it'll hit you in the nose, and sometimes it'll embrace you. So every market's a little bit different. This market right now is a little bit challenging when it comes to being a buyer, because there's so little inventory and there's so many buyers out there. So you really have to have everything dialed in when it comes to being approved, pre-approved, and fully qualified as much as possible. Having your down payment, having your finances in a row, and just working with an aggressive agent that can get your offer accepted, because it's going to be competitive. And if you have a home that you want to sell, but then you want to go buy, there's a strategy for that as well. And what most sellers are doing right now, that's an absolute, is because in the normal market, you could put your house on the market as a seller and say, I want to go buy a property, get your offer into escrow with a buyer, tell that buyer to wait, and then go buy a property. It's transaction number 2, and say, well, I want to buy your property, but I want to close on this one. And that buyer would wait for you. And that's like 4 transactions, 4 sides, buyer, seller, buyer, seller. But in this market, it's kind of impossible, almost impossible. I haven't not seen it done, not once. I've had a few clients have tried, and the right thing to do if you're selling and then you want to buy is you need to sell first, do a rent back, and then go buy your property, so that you're not a contingent buyer. Contingent buyer is somebody who needs to buy a property, but is also selling their property. And that's a little bit lower on the priority list. If you're a seller, you will look at that type of buyer in the last place position, because there's so many other buyers that are not contingent. So that's another tip there that I think is really important. You don't want to be a contingent buyer. Okay, so moving on. When you find a home, you want to take lots of things into account. Excuse me, and I'm sure you do, but just a reminder, there are apps out there that'll give you the distance from a property to your work. One of the things I would recommend you do that, because that's important if you're moving north or south, or depending how the traffic flows. That's really important. The other thing is, what about the community? Is it a community that you're comfortable with now that you're single? But what about if you're married and had kids? So think about the exit strategy in mind when you purchase. I would recommend, when you purchase, think about the exit strategy. Is how sellable is the property in the future? You might not ever sell the property, but how appealing is that property to a future buyer? So just think about that. Selling your exit strategy is important. Some of the things that I recommend to some of my clients too, not everybody is open to this, but is finding a property that has potential, and it has, maybe you buy a property that you can add on an addition and get some rental income, where it doesn't bother you or your family. Maybe adding a accessory dwelling unit above the garage or in the backyard if there's access to your yard. So there are lots of options to help you maybe become more of a real estate investor. That's a whole nother conversation. But I always recommend that, if you can and if you're willing, to be able to buy a property that has, meet all your needs, but also has future potential for growth based on whatever your goals are, and for you and your family, because everybody's different. So we'll move on to the next slide. Yeah, we're getting here down to, it's 3:20, so we're getting close to the end. But once you get past all those other steps, and that's why I said one of the myths was I recommend you don't go out looking for a home. That's a myth, to go out and do that. You should not do that before doing all of these steps that we've just gone through. Because it can be a little bit complicated, and we wouldn't want to see your heart broken if your offer doesn't get accepted, or if the house goes away that you really liked. But once your offer is accepted, that's where we're at now. So now your offer is accepted. The next step is, all right, well, your offer is accepted, but now you're going to negotiate some of those terms that are in the offer. That's how you got your offer accepted, and then you open up escrow. Once you open up escrow, then you're going to start the process of finding out more details about the property, the physical aspect of the property, the inspection, appraisal, termite inspection. You can bring in skilled professionals to look at the property a little bit further, like electricians, plumbers, roofers, but also those are the contingencies, the inspection contingencies, and we'll get into that in a second here. We have 3 contingencies that are really important that protect your down payment. So when you get an offer accepted, what you have to do is put a down payment, $3,000, $5,000, $20,000 down payment. That money is yours, but it's a good faith down payment. If you move forward, it becomes part of your purchase, the cost for your closing. If you back out, then they give you back your deposit, 5, 10, 20,000, whatever you end up putting in your offer. But you have to protect that. It's the agent's job, like myself, to protect that deposit. Because if you find something in the property that you don't like, then we have to be able to help you back out of the property without risking your deposit. So we'll get into the inspections here in a second, but it's really important to find out as much as possible about the property, so that you can make a decision. So we'll go on to the next slide, inspections, because I think that's one of the biggest things. So once you're in escrow, you have your offer accepted. The first step is to hire a home inspector. You can. Some people decide not to, but I highly recommend that you do. Even if you have an uncle or a cousin who's a contractor, you want to have somebody who is licensed to inspect and has insurance in case they miss something, because Sometimes when it's family, you might be a little bit more relaxed. But just my recommendation is I would hire a third neutral party to do your home inspections. But from that home inspection, you want to review. They're going to give you a list of everything they find in the property that's wrong. So not that that has to be fixed before you purchase, but it's going to be a complete list. Sometimes I've seen 52 pages. It could be that the handle's loose on the cabinet, or there's a ripped screen, but it could be something strong and serious, like there's a leak in the roof, or there's a crack in the foundation. So, but a good agent will go through that list with you. Will extract some of the important things that the agent recommends, but also you'll read what you want as well. But you should look at really some of the safety and health hazards, and go after that for sure. And then some of the things that are deal killers that might have come from that report, or if they don't fix that roof that's leaking, we're gonna go find another property. So it's a case-by-case basis. But one of the things I recommend when it comes to your inspection period, it's not just the physical inspection, it's the physical inspection, but also the disclosures. So any history of the property that is known about the property. I would recommend driving through the property on the weekend and the evening, on Friday night, Saturday night, maybe drive there and see how much time it takes you to get to work, or you can just use the app, like I said earlier. But some of the things you want to inspect it could be freeway noise, airplanes going over. Maybe there's a little bit too much traffic on the street that you're on. Maybe one of the neighbors is throwing a party every Friday. If you see a neighbor, if you find a property that you like, one of the tips that I would give you, another tip that I do with my clients, is go talk to the neighbor who's watering the grass, or the neighbor who's walking the dog, and ask them, hey, what do you think about this neighborhood? You want to be able to get as much information as you can, and the neighbors will always give you the real information. This is a great neighborhood, but that neighbor over there, he's always throwing parties, or he always has a lot of cars in his driveway, or whatever. So you want to just find as much information as you can, because that will be your home. So we'll move on to the next step here. So here, where we negotiate, the next step is going to be the appraisal, which is going to be not a step, but it's a process of the buying. So if we want to move to the next slide, Taida, por favor. If we go to, there you go, appraisal. Thank you. So when you're in escrow, step one, you're going to have an inspection contingency. So once you get past the inspection contingency, meaning I inspected the property, I brought all the people to inspect, and now I'm okay with the property. So you're going to sign off the inspection contingency, meaning you release that contingency. So now you can no longer back out and protect your deposit for the inspection only. So now what's left is the appraisal. So the appraisal would be another contingency. If the appraisal comes in high, that's great for you as a buyer, meaning you have equity. If it comes in at price, that's good. You're getting it for what it's worth. And if it comes in low, then that's a negotiation, because you're not going to want to pay the difference. But in this market, some clients are very willing to pay the difference to get the property accepted. So like I said, it's a very competitive market. But in general, the appraisal, how it works is the appraiser is going to look at 1 mile radius to see what the values are. Because I would just wanted to share this with you before I get into the appraisal. Many people will look at the value of their home based on some of the online applications or online websites like Zillow or Redfin, Trulia, Realtor.com. But many of those websites are incorrect. I think it was a CEO at Zillow a couple years ago. I think he listed his property for like 2.4 million or 5 million or something like that. It was a higher number, and it was valued at that price on Zillow, but when he sold his property, it was like half of what it was valued at. So what Zillow does in all of those websites, just to give you a heads up when it comes to the appraisal and valuation, what it does is it's an algorithm. It'll take, it's a mathematical algorithm. It'll take, 1,000 homes in the area as an example, and the total price that each of those homes sold for is X, and it'll divide it by that much. So it'll give you a general number of what your property is worth. So my advice would be don't go off of Zillow for what your home is worth. Or if you want to buy a home and it says it's worth a certain amount, don't go off of Zillow or some of those websites. You want to talk to an agent and look at more specifics, because those websites won't give you the, a number based off of the condition. It's just a general algorithm of the value based on the sales and the value of the area. But it doesn't know, those websites don't know if you've upgraded your kitchen, or if you've added, you've torn down and redone the bathrooms, or if you redid your whole home on the inside. So you can't go off of those websites, is what I'm trying to say. But generally speaking, an appraisal, it'll go off of where the home is located. So if here's your home that you want to buy, it'll be a mile radius, all the properties that have sold in the last 6 months, and also it has to be like property. So if it's in the same development, that's better. And then also not crossing any major streets or highways, because some communities change from one street to the next. And if it's the same development, older communities or newer communities, they were all built, there's usually 2 to 4 different style of homes, like 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. So if it's the same make and model, then that's what the appraiser is going to go for in your same zip code. So that is for the appraisal, and that's also contingency. So once that appraiser comes in, the price comes in. If it's at price, then you sign off on the appraisal contingency, meaning you release that, and now you can no longer back out for that appraisal. So again, inspection, appraisal, and loan. So the reason is you release them one at a time is you're committing, as a buyer, you're committing yourself to moving forward with the purchase. So let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, a lot of information. Hopefully I'm not losing anybody, but if you have any questions, just please feel free to put in the comments. So we'll go to the next slide, which will be the full loan approval. So thank you, Tade. So this is the last contingency that will protect the last contingency that should be and will be removed in writing before you close. So the last and final thing that you remove is the loan contingency. And the reason you remove that last is you need the appraisal. The appraisal has to be given to the lender has to approve that everything is good. And then once the underwriter, who's the person doing the approving, once the underwriter approves that file completely, that'll be the full loan approval. And once that's fully approved, then you're 100% committed once you remove that. So that's the last thing that you're going to remove in writing, but you'll have usually 21 days to 17 to 21 days to remove your loan contingency. So we'll go on to the next slide. And here we're getting real close to closing. So the next slide would be, you've already reviewed all of your documents. You've gone through the disclosures part of the inspection. Previous was inspection. Contingency is reviewing also the documents that the seller gives you. And the seller will give you documents based on the history of the property. And there's 2 documents in there that are really, really important: the TDS and the SPQ. When you're a buyer, the TDS, transfer disclosure statement, will give you the history of the property. And seller property questionnaire, SPQ, will also give you a history of the property that the homeowner is aware of. It might be, there's questions out there that did somebody die in the property? Did somebody manufacture drugs in the property? And it discloses, like Megan's Law. If there's, somebody who's child molester who lives, 2 or 3 houses down or a block away, or a couple blocks away, that might be something that will make you say, I don't want to buy this property. So those are part of the inspections. But once you review all the inspections, review all the reports that come with buying a property, then you'll go ahead and move on. But if you found something that you didn't like or you can negotiate, then it'll be another round of negotiations. So, and that could lead to getting a credit from the buyer or something like that. I just had a seller, as an example. They sold the property as is. I was representing the seller, but the seller gave a credit to the buyer because the property was an older home. they fixed it up really nice, but they removed the air conditioning and the heating. So when the buyer came in, heating is needed for a loan. So the seller gave the buyer a $6,000 credit towards an HVAC system. So it's sometimes you can get money back or a reduction in the purchase price based on what you find in your inspection report. So we'll move on to the next one here. And so now once you remove all your contingencies and you've done all your inspections for the property physically, inspections of all the paperwork and the community and the area, you're comfortable, and you remove that, then you get your appraisal, everything comes in, or you negotiate based on what comes in for the appraisal, you get past that, moving forward, you remove that, then you remove your loan, your everything's in order with your finances, and now basically you've removed all your contingencies. So one of the last and final stages of buying your home is you're going to sign all of the loan documents. You're going to have to get a notary. Usually you'll sign it at escrow, or they'll send a mobile notary to your home, and then you'll sign. And then your lender will send the money, wire transfer that money to escrow, and then escrow will wire that money to the bank to pay off the existing loan, and then they'll do a recorded deed in your name, and you get the keys, and then you can celebrate. But one really important thing right now, where we're at with cybersecurity and digital age, where everybody's on their phones and you can do everything from here, and I would highly suggest in this real estate industry, to protect yourself when it comes to a wire transfer. There are sometimes hackers that try to get to your account, get you to wire your money to the wrong people, and then you can lose your money. It's happened here in San Diego a couple years ago, like $700,000, somebody's life savings. They wired it to the wrong account because their account was hacked, their email was hacked. So in order to avoid that, this is a huge tip. The best thing you can do is when you open up escrow, you're going to be in communication with the escrow officer, the company, let's just call it XYZ Escrow Company. And you're going to have to send them documentation, your earnest money deposit, that's the $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 initially at the very beginning when you open up escrow. You also have to wire that to escrow. But before you wire anything to anybody, you want to make sure you pick up the phone, you call the escrow officer, the people who are at the company, you look them up on Google, you make sure it's the same phone number, the same company, and then you recognize the voice, because you won't be talking to the secretary or the receptionist, the escrow officer, the assistant. So whoever that escrow officer is, you should know who they are. You should have a conversation with them. And when they send you the wire instructions, and that's the instructions to send your money digitally through your bank, you want to go over that document with them, number by number, and the routing number, and making sure that this is a legitimate wire instructions. And that will help you avoid getting scammed out of thousands and thousands of dollars. So make sure that when you're ready to buy, you get that, you're in escrow, you get the wire instructions. One of the most important things you can do to protect your money is pick up the phone and have a conversation. And if they say, oh, this is, they sound like they're in another country, you want to, take caution. So, but as long as you take those steps, work with your agent. If you're in San Diego, I'll guide you through all of that. None of my clients, thank God, that has ever happened. But some of my clients have actually been put in that situation where somehow email hacker, somebody tries to get their money wired to the wrong place. So it's really important. It's happening. But it's an easy way to protect that is just pick up the phone, talk to your escrow officer, and verify the wiring instructions. So that being said, I think here you're basically at the final stage, and you once you get past all of this, then the agent gives you your keys and you move in. And once they record the property in your name, then you celebrate, and it was all worth it. So during the process, there will be bumps in the road, but when it comes to getting the keys and having, making new memories with your family, Christmas time or Thanksgiving, it's all worth it. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say. You can go to the next slide. I think one more. Oh, if you back up one, Tyler, please. So the steps to home ownership is pretty much done. I just had some of these hot topics that I know people have asked me about all the time, and they might be for a whole nother presentation, Tyler, or if you guys want, or I could just feel free to send me questions about these subjects. But some of the things that are hot topics right now are, is it a seller's market? Should I sell now? But what would I do? And I covered that in the presentation. One of the things I didn't talk about too much, but I would like to briefly cover on this, and we'll end with that, is the accessory dwelling unit conversation. Right now, many people in San Diego County are adding onto their property another unit for rental income because there's a housing shortage, and the state and also the government, federal government, has pushed every state and every city to encourage homeowners to build onto their properties if they can. So there's impact fees that every city is deferring right now, or waiving, better said, up until 2023, I believe, or 2022. So next year, the year after, it will no longer be waived. And those impact fees is just paperwork fees for every city, and it's about $20,000 to $30,000 depending on the city you live in, of just paperwork. So that's money that could be spent on materials to build out your property, your accessory dwelling unit. If you have a garage, as an example, an existing garage, 2-car garage, you can probably convert the inside of that for 60 to 80,000 depending on the upgrades, and then if you rented that out, you could probably get a good $1,500 to $2,200 a month. So you can recuperate your money pretty quickly. But that's a whole nother conversation. Dive, if you want to go to the next slide real quick. And these are the different types of ADUs that exist. You can, detached garage will be the first little slide there, where you convert the garage. The red piece is the accessory dwelling unit. It's also called a granny flat, a casita, studio, but it could be a detached garage, an attached garage. It could be above your house. It could be some states in your basement. It could be above your garage, or it could be converting the actual garage. So, but these are things that are really they're really good. And if anybody has questions in regards to this, I myself am actually in the process of doing a ADU on top of my garage. So and I've helped other clients do the same. So that's another conversation. But I just wanted to bring that topic up because there's a lot of information and a lot of benefits if you have the space to do it on your property. You can go on the next slide, Tyler, I think, and we'll go back. But I think that's it. Interest rates and all that. We covered everything. I think that's it for now. Thank you guys for your time. And if you want to get a hold of me, I just wanted to put this slide up. There's my phone number. I'm easy to get a hold of, and there's my email. Or just send a message in the chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer any questions. Regardless if you work with me or not, I just want to be able to help and give you information, and yeah, that you can make a better decision with wherever you're at in the buying process. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerry. Well, that was a great presentation. Great presentation. Like the good thing about it is that for those that can watch it later, you provide a lot of information, about the buying process, and I'm pretty sure that many folks are going to benefit from it. I was able to pick up a few questions for you. I have 4 questions for you, Gerry. Okay. The first one was when you were talking about the credit score. Someone asked, because you said that it doesn't influence so much like the purchase, but someone asked, what's the minimum score to qualify for the home loan?
That's a good question. It's going to depend on the type of financing that they're actually using. But generally speaking, you can buy a home if your credit score is a 540, 560, or 580. There's different programs, but those are the thresholds on the lower limit that you can buy. FHA, I believe, will allow you to buy at 560 to 580. That the programs keep changing, so that's why I'm not sure, and I'm not a lender. I don't do this lending 100%, but I am in touch with the lender a lot. So yeah, if they have questions, just have specifics, they can reach out to me and I'll be more than happy to answer. But yeah, those on the low fives is the answer. Where normally you would think a 700. So excellent credit score is like 700, 710. Anything above 700 is excellent. But if you have, I think 780, 760, anything above that, credit scores go as high as 850. But anybody who has a credit score that's higher than like 720, 760, you can't get any better than that. But you don't need to have a score that high to buy. So.
Yeah, so what you're saying is like if you are above 760, from 760 and 950, just like the same.
It's the same, yeah. Yeah, which
Okay.
is excellent credit.
Yeah.
Yeah, credit's interesting. It's hard to get there, and then it's hard to maintain it there. So you got to be really careful with your credit. But yeah.
And you shared some really good tips in your conversation about the 30% usage, and so it is important for those that are planning to buy a house to reach out to a real estate agent like Gerry to see what's your situation. And just like he said, they can conduct an assessment of your current financial situation and then come out with a strategy, right, Gerry, to qualify for the best loan possible.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, you want to work with an agent. Either the agent knows the industry well and they know the lending part of it, or they are in good partnership with a good lender who can work with the buyer through that process of the numbers and the buying, the options, and all of the strategies and the steps needed to be taken to be able to be in a better position to buy. But yeah, it's either the lender or the agent, or sometimes it's one or the other. Sometimes it's both. But every agent works with the lender because they go hand in hand, financing and homeownership.
So the other question that we have here is you talk about lenders, and someone asked if you have any recommendations in San Diego.
Yeah. There's the lender that I personally use. I don't get any commission or I don't get paid, but I do recommend him. He's helping with my financing of my own purchase of my own home, and I think he's not pushy. He's very consultative. His name is James Carmody. And he's in Mission Valley. Synergy One Lending is the company he works for. So
perfect. Thank you, Gerry. The other question that we have here, it says, is there room for negotiations in a seller's market? Because you talk about having an agent that can help you negotiate.
Yeah.
So how good are you negotiating in a seller's market, Gerry?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, but it's tough. I'll be honest. And I say that humbly. I'm pretty good. I do consider myself very knowledgeable, and I do everything I can to help my clients. But being honest, it's very tough. I think so to answer the question, it's a tough market. It is possible to negotiate, but I think it's very hard to negotiate on the first phase of negotiations, because the first phase of negotiations is just getting your offer accepted. Yeah. So you have the seller here, and you have all these offers trying to get in and get accepted, and that's the first phase. So I'm really good at that, and that's hard when it comes to, like, I imagine they're thinking, or what they mean by negotiating is, can I get them a discount or money back for the sales price? That's kind of impossible right now, because just think about it. If you're selling your car, and as an example, you want 5,000 for it, and you get a line of people, 20 people that want to buy your car for more than 5,000, it's hard to negotiate that. But if you can get that offer accepted, getting back to house, you can get that offer accepted. That's phase one of the negotiation, is just getting your offer accepted. Then when you get into phase two, which is the inspections and all of the disclosures, there might be something in there to negotiate and to be able to get some money back or a discount on the purchase price, like the example of my client that gave a $6,000 credit to the buyer. So
yeah,
hopefully that answers the question.
Oh, for sure.
Está difícil, la verdad. La verdad que sí está difícil ahorita.
I can imagine, especially in San Diego, maybe in some other parts of the country, but right now, I mean, in California in general, but cities like San Diego, San Francisco and stuff, It's challenging. I mean,
It
just
is.
like you said in your presentation, there is a high demand for homes and very few are selling. So that's a problem right there.
Yeah.
The other question that we have is, do you recommend sell by owner in a seller's market?
That's a good question. That's something I didn't really cover too much. For sale by owner, there's a lot of people out there that want to sell on their own. And the reason is to avoid paying somebody like myself, to avoid paying real estate agent fees, to save as much money as they can. So it's going to depend. The end goal, I think, for the seller, that's more of a seller question, is do you want to keep as much money in your pocket as possible? So it would be that scenario. I would recommend, looking at yourself, the experience you have, um, and I don't want to come off uh, because I'm a real estate agent, right? So I want to come off saying, no, you need to hire a real estate agent. But there are many benefits to having a good real estate agent, an experienced real estate agent, because when you sell for yourself, you're going to have to weigh out the pros and the cons. Everything has pros and cons. You'll sell for yourself, and you will have the option to save money. So that's the big reason for people wanting to sell on their own. But the negative would be that you're at risk when it comes to the legalities that you open yourself up to if you don't disclose something properly, or if it depends who the buyer is, because it could be a very experienced buyer or a very unexperienced buyer. So it could be very complicated and very dangerous for you. But if you're experienced, if you've owned and bought properties before, you know the process. I think it's possible for you to sell it on your own. But can an agent who's experienced get you more than the money you're going to save for your commission? I'll give you this example to answer this question for that client. So I have a client that sold their property just recently. Um, we put their property on the market for 695, and over a 3-day weekend, we had offers that came in what they asked for, and then 10, 20, 30,000 more than what they asked for. And being the agent that I am, an experienced agent, instead of just saying yes, because there was offers, that was more than what my client wanted, but I was able to talk to negotiate with the other agents, and we were able to get them more and more and more instead of just going with the highest one. I pushed a little bit to be able to get them more for the price for their home. We ended up getting $825,000 for that
Is
house that we listed at $695,000. So that's why that commission for the seller was about 50,000, 60,000, maybe a little bit less total. So do you want to save 60,000 or make 150,000? So that's the difference of for sale by owner or not, and it's a case by case basis. So that's a really honest answer, excuse me, for that question.
yeah, no, and with that example, you just show how crazy the market is in San Diego right now.
Yep,
It's not
very
just like
crazy.
a couple $1,000. It's like almost 200,000 more. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. It's very crazy.
And
Not impossible, but it's crazy.
yeah, definitely. Um, the other question that just came out is in relationship to the ADUs. Based on your
Yeah.
experience and what you have seen in the market, and you also
Mhm.
mentioned that you are in the process of building one in your
Yeah.
property. How long is it taking to get the permits approved?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it's going to be slower than you think for the most part,
like
because I think
like
most
anything in
most
California, right?
yeah, it's
Yes.
going to be slower than you think. But if you're in California, but it's city by city. So depending on the city that you're in or the county that you're in, the timelines will be different. But generally speaking, if you hire an architect, then you'll need a civil engineer. Uh, so the architect and engineer will be working hand in hand with you once your plans are fully approved by you, that you're okay with what the end result is as far as where things are going and the design, then that architect will submit to the city. Once he submits to the city, depending on the city, it could be, so before, let me back up. So working with the architect, probably 2 to 4 months, depending on how busy the architect is. But everybody in construction right now is really, really busy. So 2 to 3 months, I would say, working with the architect to finalize your design. And then once you submit that to the city, it's going to be, city by city is different, but at least another 2 to 3 months for the city to go back and forth with the architect to make revisions, to correct the revisions, and then to get a final approval. So we're looking at probably 3 to 6 months from the time of meeting with an architect, and about 3 months, 4 months from the time those plans are submitted to the city at the latest. And it depends on the ADU that they build, because the ADU, it could be like a junior ADU, which is less than 500 square feet, or it could be a full ADU, which is up to 1,200 square feet. So if it's a garage conversion, as an example, that'll move a lot faster because the structure is there, the soil testing and the engineering part of that can be waived because it's already, the foundation is there. So that could go a little bit faster. It could be for garage conversion, you take your 2-car existing garage and submit plans for that. It could be a little bit faster, maybe like 2 to 3 months, maybe 4 months total. It does move faster. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it is what it is. But that is one thing that I firmly believe in, and I don't want to extend this presentation over. But I think a lot of the construction codes and stuff, they have to be improved, because we're still dealing with codes, from the 80s, 70s and stuff,
Yeah.
and they need to be improved. And the process itself, it has to be improved, and that's why technology and the digital economy can facilitate that a lot. It's going to add consistency to the process. It's going to make it more transparent. It's going to be good for the city because it's not going to cost the taxpayers all that money, to go through. To wait for all those months for the building plans to be approved. But I think we're going to get there, and hopefully, with the new investments that are going to happen at the city and the state level, we can help to optimize all these operations because it's going to be good for the economy. Gerry, what a great presentation. Please share your contact information again for those folks that are going to watch this presentation later.
Sure. Yeah, you can get a hold of me. It's Gerry Carrillo. It's Gerardo Carrillo, but I go by Gerry Carrillo, and my phone number is 619-368-1992. So 619-368-1992. And email, you can get a hold of me with Gerry with a G, GerryTheRealtor@gmail.com. So that's GERRY, therealtor@gmail.com. Or you can find me on social media. Just Google Gerry, GERRY. Carrillo, CARRILLO, and hashtag on Instagram is Gerry Carrillo, and you can find me on Facebook as well.
Yeah, Gerry is everywhere, and that's a good sign. If you are a realtor, you're not hiding. That means that you have a really good reputation. You can check out Gerry's career, and it's outstanding. He's very transparent, very honest, very professional. I can tell you from personal experience. So make sure that you contact Gerry if you want to get a home here in the San Diego County area. I'm pretty sure that he can make it happen. Thank you so much, Gerry.
Buying or selling, I'm here for you. Thank you, Taide. We will be in touch. I'm here for you. Anything you need. Take care.
Thank you, brother. Take care.
It was an honor.
Bye.